Hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week, my first question comes to me from Review for Real, who asks, "Hey Steve, I really do enjoy your videos, particularly 5 Stupid Things and Had to Ask, so I thought I would ask a question for your next Had to Ask video. Whenever I hear you talk about women's inequality in this country, always bring up the fact that there is a lack of women in elected government. My question is this really a good measure of gender equality? I mean, first a woman has to choose to run for office, win a primary and a general election. There are a myriad of reasons as to why a person would choose to vote against a candidate, and gender may not have anything to do with it. For instance, in New Jersey, Chris Christie is crushing female opponent Barbara Buono in the polls, and I doubt it has anything to do with sexism, especially considering he is beating by 20% among women voters. Yours respectfully, Review for Real." I think there are 2 things to talk about here, and the first thing is, yeah, it's true, often when I do mention gender inequality in videos, I bring up the lopsidedness of the sexes in representative government. There are a lot more men in elected government as opposed to women, and it's pretty much always been that way. That's true. I do bring that up a lot, and I do think that's important. But you'll notice that I never bring it up all by itself. I've never argued that the gender inequality in government is a sufficient indicator of gender inequality in our broader culture. I don't think that's the case. I think it is one of many, many indicators that we can look at to conclude that there is still a lot of gender bias and a lot of gender inequality favoring men and counting against women in general in our culture. I also mentioned the number of women who have high-ranking positions in business, the number of women CEOs, the different positions of power that women occupy, let's say in the entertainment industry, how movie star actresses are paid as opposed to actors. There's just all kinds of different cultural indicators that none of which by themselves are strong enough to conclude, well, clearly there's still a problem with gender inequality in this culture, but they add up. They paint a picture. The other thing is, I think you're sort of looking at it backwards, because you mentioned, there are all these reasons why a woman would choose to not run or would not be elected to an office. And it's true that, there are people who would vote against a female candidate, not because she's a woman, but because they disagree with her on some fundamental issue, or they don't think she'd do a very good job, or whatever. I mean, I would never vote for Sarah Palin, for instance, whether she's a woman or not. I would just never vote for her. So you're absolutely right. And I would never suggest that you should vote for a particular candidate just because of their sex. That's the wrong way to look at it. And I think it's also the wrong way to look at it to view these issues as isolated things and say, well, if we elect more women to government, if we make a conscious, concerted effort to vote for more women in elections, or to nominate more women for courts or for cabinet appointments or whatever, then that will solve the problem of gender inequality. I think it's exactly the opposite of that. I think when we begin to solve the problem of gender inequality, which we're already doing in certain measures, I mean, to a degree, I think the trend, for instance, of the female representation in government, the trend has been gradually going up. There are, in the federal government, the representation of women is higher than it has been in the past. There are more female members of Congress than there have been in the past, and that's a good thing. It's a good, positive trend. And I think when we begin to address those issues, those gender issues, as a society, and as we make more progress in that area, we will see these indicators change. It's not a matter of saying, well, gender inequality is a problem, so let's hire more female CEOs, let's elect more female congresspeople, that will fix it. That's the wrong way of looking at it. The way of looking at it that makes more sense to me is to say, as we continue to fix it, as we continue to make progress in this area, we will see these indicators begin to change. Here's one from Jason, the puppet master of Opinionville. Hey Steve, when I was 13, I believed in UFOs, Bigfoot, Nessie, ghosts, etc. Did you believe in pure hokum when you were younger that you don't now? it was a lot more like my belief in God, actually, in the sense that I didn't ever really believe, but I wanted to. I would sort of look for reasons to believe, as opposed to, like, I wonder if Bigfoot really exists. Let me find out for a fact whether he does or doesn't. It was nothing that objective. It was more like, oh man, I hope Bigfoot exists. That would be so cool. Let me look for reasons that I can believe. Let me look for excuses to maintain that belief. It was things like that. And yeah, absolutely. I wanted to believe in Bigfoot and UFOs and ghosts and the Loch Ness Monster and all that shit. I mean, when I was a kid, especially because I was into astronomy, and I mean, if you're a science nerd as a kid and you love astronomy, what more powerful fantasy is there than to look up at the stars and imagining there are people up there that are coming down here to visit us, or perhaps that are watching us from their home planets, across the great expanse of space. There's no more powerful fantasy than that. And of course, as a kid, I wanted to believe that very much. And maybe in a sense, I believed it. I mean, I certainly would speak and try to think as though I believed it. And it was something that eventually, again, sort of analogous to my belief in God. I just grew up and had to admit there's no evidence for any of this stuff. And there's no reason to believe it. As you say, it's hokum. But yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely have that in common. And I've said before in a video in this series, I think, there was a time, even more recently, in my early 20s, when I very much wanted to believe in channeling and people talking to the dead, psychics like John Edward, crossing over and making contact with the departed spirits of our loved ones. There was a time that I really wanted that to be true. So yeah, absolutely. I have a whole bunch of of skeletons in my closet as far as bullshit beliefs that I used to either hold or very much want to hold. Here's one from Afterthought BTW. Here's a question for you. Do you think a singer has to have a powerful melodic voice to be a good singer? If not, why not? I guess I'm thinking of people like Leonard Cohen, say, who I can't listen to for a few seconds without my head hurting from the sound of his voice, and yet a lot of people seem to like him. I can't for the life of me understand why. Don't get me wrong, I like a number of his songs, just when other people sing them. This is a point where our tastes definitely diverge, because I would say Leonard Cohen is one of my favorites for his voice, as well as for his writing ability. If I were going to make a list of my favorite singers, judging purely by the quality of their voice, Leonard Cohen would be on my list. I just love Leonard Cohen's voice. I think it's important for a singer to not have a technically bad voice. And what I mean by that is they're able to hit the notes that they're trying to hit. They don't have to be classically trained. They don't have to be an opera singer, but they have to be able to hit the notes that they're trying to hit. They can't be singing sour notes. But you know what? Having said that, even that is not absolutely essential to me, because to me the most important thing for a singer is not the quality of their voice. It's that they're singing something that is interesting and that is meaningful to me. And so just as important, if not more important than their voice to me, is that the person writing their songs, which may be them or maybe someone else, knows what they're doing and is a good writer and is writing good songs. And it's totally a matter of taste. It's totally subjective. My good song might be your terrible song. But that's very important to me. A lot of the people, singers, that I don't even really think of as singers, but I mean they're singing their songs, that I really love are guys and girls like Leonard Cohen, like Bob Dylan, like Tom Waits, who, I mean, Tom Waits, according to sort of the general sort of classical standard, has no voice at all, but sings some of the most wonderful, beautiful music I've ever heard. It's some of my favorite music. I think a voice with character is more important than a voice that is absolutely perfect. Like, there are plenty of singers who have great voices. I mean, absolutely great voices on a technical level. Like Wayne Newton, I think, has a really good voice. Tom Jones has a really good voice. Mariah Carey has a great voice. Whitney Houston had an incredible voice. But I'm not a fan really of any of their music because they never sing anything that I find remotely interesting. They're not using their voice for anything. That's why a singer like Nico Case, who has one of the greatest voices I've ever heard and also writes just fucking amazing songs. That's why I put her so high. Nico Case is one of my favorite singers, musicians, whatever, because she has that rare combination of having just a stunning voice, and also she writes these incredible songs. She uses the voice to sing about such interesting, compelling, wonderful things. And that's a rare combination. And it definitely puts her above the pack as far as I'm concerned. But having a technically perfect voice, having a melodic voice or a soothing voice or a powerful voice, a voice with character to me is more important. And what the voice is singing about matters more to me than having a great voice. Here's one from Special Buzz Juice. Steve, I am a married man whose wife makes more money than he does. I am currently in school at a very good university to earn a degree and doing what I can to make ends meet. I have, however, heard it said that in much the same way women are often objectified by their appearance, men are often objectified by their occupations. And I couldn't agree more. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've been made to feel inferior for being with a woman who has a better job than me. Thoughts? I think you're right. I think there definitely is a cultural bias that tells people that the man should be the breadwinner, and the woman, if the woman works, she's just sort of doing supplemental income, or if they have kids, the woman is taking care of the kids, and her job sort of should come second to that, and it's the man's job to be the provider and the primary breadwinner. And I can relate to what you're saying, because for pretty much our entire relationship, my wife has had a better paying job than I have had. And what's interesting is I haven't felt much pressure from it myself. Like, I have never been made to feel like I was less than a man, or I was inadequate, or I was doing something wrong. But my wife has felt the pressure. My wife's family have said things to her about what's Steve doing, how much does he make, what's he doing for a living, that sort of thing. And she feels it. And maybe it's because it's her family doing the asking and the pressuring. But it doesn't really come down to me except through her. Because that, again, that cultural bias, that assumption that, well, it's the man's job to be the breadwinner, not the woman's, is very, very strong. And my advice to you is, and I know this is difficult, and it's the best advice I can give you because it's what has worked for me, is to just not give a shit about what other people say. Jeremy Styron, Steve, which do you think is the better show, The Simpsons or Family Guy? For me, it's Family Guy. I never thought I would say this after watching for years, but I have gotten kind of tired of The Simpsons. Family Guy seems to have been able to keep pushing the limits with satire and edgy comedy, and in turn keeping me interested. Cheers, Jeremy. If you're talking about which is the better show right now, which show has better new episodes airing every Sunday, then I would agree that it's Family Guy. I think Family Guy is the better show right now, just purely on the basis that a new episode of Family Guy generally seems to make me laugh more than a new episode of The Simpsons. But if you're talking about what is a better show overall, it's The Simpsons, and it's not even close. I mean, I like Family Guy. I'm not a Seth MacFarlane hater. I think Family Guy is a funny show. I think American Dad is a funny show. I've never really watched the Cleveland Show. But I mean, I think he's funny. I think his stuff is funny. I'm a fan of his. But compared to The Simpsons, both in terms of longevity and in terms of just how incredibly, reliably hilarious that show was for its first 7 or 8 years, I mean, where almost every week the episode was just genius. It was just so funny. And those Halloween episodes, those first 5 or 6 or 7 Halloween episodes that they did, were just amazing. I mean, just almost so good you couldn't believe it. And there's just never been a show on that has been as funny as The Simpsons was when it was at its peak. There's just no comparison. And the only other shows that I would say even come close to that level of quality it's not Family Guy. I mean, I know Family Guy has a lot of really big fans, but I mean, if I'm going to think of comedies that compare to The Simpsons. And let's just keep with animated comedies because that's sort of a subgenre unto itself. I mean, I'm thinking of shows like King of the Hill or Futurama or South Park. I would rank all of those light years ahead of Family Guy. Again, nothing against Family Guy. It's a funny show, but those other shows I just mentioned, Futurama and King of the Hill and South Park, they're closer to the Simpsons orbit. You know, Family Guy's not there. Omni Shambles 94. Hey Steve, 4 months ago I came out to my family, and I'm happy to say they were as accepting as I hoped they would be. One of the things I wonder about is whether most people have questioned their sexuality, like I did for many years. Have you ever had times where you were unsure of what you were attracted to? Thanks. Really like your vids. I think it's a little simplistic to assume that you know, you sort of, you're born and you grow up and you hit puberty and you're like, oh, I'm straight, or oh, I'm gay. I think for some people it is like that. I mean, certainly for me it was like that. But for other people it's a little fuzzy. It's a little more like, well, gee, I don't know. You know, maybe I'm a little of this and a little of that. That's the impression I get, and it feels like it's that way for a lot of people. It wasn't that way for me. I always pretty much knew. But I'll tell you what, your question reminds me of an experience I had when I was, it was in my late teens. It was either the last year of high school or the year right after high school. I can't remember exactly. But my best friend at the time and we were like inseparable. We hung out like all the time. We would see each other every day. And I made a joke about how I was gay for Ben Affleck. And because this was in the area, the late 90s, you know, Good Will Hunting had come out, and he had been in Chasing Amy, which I just loved. And it was sort of the first wave of, like, it was the first Affleck offensive. And I really liked Ben Affleck as an actor. I thought he was a really good actor, and I still do. I still like Ben Affleck. And I remember saying to my buddy, you know, God, I'm just so gay for Ben Affleck, or something like that. And then he didn't call me for like a week, and I wasn't, even back then as a teenager, young adult, I wasn't really neurotic about that sort of thing. I didn't really notice that he didn't call me. I just figured he had other shit to do, and I did my own other shit, hung out with other friends, or did things by myself, or whatever. And I didn't really think anything of it. And then about a week goes by, and he shows up at my house, and he's like, hey, you want to go hang out? You want to go for a drive or something? So we're driving. We lived in Clear Spring, and we were going to Hagerstown, which is about a 10 or 15 minute drive. And he tells me that the reason he didn't call me was because I said I was gay for Ben Affleck, and he thought that meant that I might be gay, and he wasn't sure if you know, he wasn't sure about that. Like, he wasn't sure if we could still be friends after that. And I said, well, you know, I'm not gay. I was just expressing how much I like Ben Affleck by saying I'm gay for Ben Affleck. But I don't happen to be gay myself, and I think he knew that. I mean, we had talked about girls and shit our whole high school lives. I mean, we'd known each other for a long time, and we were very close. And I think we each knew that the other guy was straight. But I remember him telling me that, and you know, and we were still friends for years after that, and we got past that. But I remember thinking it was odd at the time, and it's odd thinking back on it now, that just the possibility that I might be gay, never mind jumping to that crazy conclusion about, you know, I'm gay for Ben Affleck, but just the possibility that I might be gay would make him completely question our whole friendship and decide maybe, you know, we couldn't hang out anymore. That sort of stuck with me, that the extremity of that reaction. Checker222, question, are there any theories or ways of thought that you mostly believe that are generally considered by the average bloke to be a conspiracy theory type thing? And or are there any parts of conspiracy theories that almost convince you, like little nuggets that create sticking points to you, that give you pause and keep you from completely dismissing them? Thanks, love your vids. I don't think anything I believe could be considered a conspiracy theory, and there aren't really any points of conspiracy theories that make me sort of think that they're true. Conspiracy theories are easy to dismiss for me. But you bring up a really interesting point, and that is those sticking points, those little catches, the little bits of unexplained things. Those, I think, are what hook a lot of people into conspiracy theories. The people who believe them, but maybe aren't really like die-hard, crazy, paranoid conspiracy theorists. I think that's what gets a lot of people that don't really think it through, or haven't really thought about or studied scientific method, critical thinking, that sort of thing. And they think about the JFK assassination, and they think, wow, how could Oswald have fired that many shots that accurately? Something about that doesn't add up, you know. And that's the hook that they hang it on. They just can't get that out of their head. And I think that's what conspiracy theories thrive on. And I think every conspiracy theory has at least one thing like that. One unexplained thing, one fact that inspires a little incredulity that makes you think, oh, I don't know. You know, that's how they work. That's how they bore into your brain. And once you recognize that that's what they do, and once you're able to understand that one unexplained fact or one improbable event doesn't mean that the whole thing is a conspiracy, it's easy to just brush it aside. You recognize it and you go, okay, that's bullshit, that's not rational, and you're able to, you know, accept the whole series of facts that are in an explanation for something and decide for yourself whether it's a good explanation or not. And you realize that that one little sticking point isn't enough to tear the whole thing down. But if you're not used to thinking that way, or if you haven't been exposed to that sort of thinking, then it's easy to be stuck with something like that. I don't think there's anything I believe that falls into that category, but I definitely recognize that sort of thing. And it is absolutely one of the reasons why conspiracy theories are able to take hold with so many people. I mean, when you hear about surveys where they say, you know, some insane, like disturbing percentage of people believe that 9/11, you know, we're not being told the whole truth about 9/11. Most of those people are not die-hard 9/11 truthers. Most of those people are not listening to Alex Jones's radio show or handing out copies of Loose Change to their friends. They're just people who think that there's just something a little incredible, there's something a little preposterous about, you know, oh, how'd they take over those planes with box cutters? Or you know, wow, did those towers really fall because those planes hit them and caught fire? There are things like that hook people like that. And that sort of thing is what allows conspiracy theories to thrive, because they play on that incredulity. They play on that ignorance and that sense of, ooh, just something just doesn't add up. But I'll tell you what does add up. It's a very sound conclusion to reach, that when you hear that sound, it is damn near time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Real Cool Cowboy. Hi Steve, what is your favorite era of wrestling? The 80s, the Attitude NWO modern era, or the current era of wrestling? Personally, I think the Attitude Era was the best, not simply because I was the biggest fan of wrestling at that time, but also because of the cultivation of the anti-hero in mainstream professional wrestling, while also becoming a more mainstream and accessible property. While the 80s were great start, to me, the Attitude Era pushed it to a different direction. Peace. Of those options, I would have to go with the 80s, and the thing that gives it the edge is match quality. The Attitude NWO Monday Night War era was great. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan, but especially in the WWF, the angles and the promos were often great, but bell to bell just didn't do it for me most of the time. So got to go with the 80s. Good matches. Andrew Palladino. I really love the way you talk about humans' mistreatment of animals. What are your views on veganism? I have no problem with veganism. I think it's great. It's probably a healthier lifestyle in terms of diet than the one I have. But man, you know, meat just tastes good. The deliciousness, I think, overwhelms all moral concerns. I do think that animals that are raised for meat should be treated much better than they are, but I don't know. It's a weakness. I just can't let it go. Ziggletooth, I have a question. Why? I don't know. Deeds Yosu 071, my wife had a dream about you last night, Shives. Anything I need to know? I think you already know it. Your wife has really good taste in men. Precambrian lullaby. Nothing too silly, eh? Well, have you ever noticed that whenever you pause a YouTube video, vlog pieces, it looks like they're pushing one out? I mean pooping. If you haven't, I'd invite you to give it a shot. I know that you read these ahead of time, so go ahead and try it. Random video. Pause anywhere. It looks like they're pooping, don't you think? Okay, everybody try it. Ready? 3, 2, 1, pause. Did it look like I was pooping? I don't know. I'll have to watch and see. Bill F. 1967. If you were allowed only one specific type of fast food burger for the rest of your life, which would it be? Perhaps more importantly, which fast food chain do you think has the best fries? One type of fast food burger would be Wendy's, and the fries would be down between either Wendy's and Burger King. And if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say the Burger King fries are the best. Wendy's burgers are probably one of the #1 reasons why I could never be a vegan. Lax Paint. Steve, 2 best Oliver Stone films. 2 worst? Well, for me, the 2 best would probably be Platoon and Natural Born Killers, and the 2 worst would be the 2 Wall Street movies. I just have no use for either one of those. TGWNN. How many 5-year-olds could you take down in a fight in a large room without weapons? Would you have a specific strategy to win? Maybe a bit inappropriate, but I've seen this question debated before, and it was fascinating. I think I would take down quite a few of them, and my strategy would be just to try to punch them right in the nose. Not hard enough to break their noses, but just enough to get them to cry and to stun them. You know, you pop them in the nose, shock them, get them crying, get them to run away. Boy, you could probably take down a fucking pile of them that way. Matthew Osborne. Steve, are you bald? Not yet. It's moving in the wrong direction, but it's still all there. And Logical Cake, what are your thoughts on sin taxes? I'm all for them. I think sin taxes are some of my favorite taxes. I actually think when people ask me about like legalizing marijuana, my stock answer is legalize it, regulate it, and tax the shit out of it. I think taxes on legalized, regulated drugs, on alcohol, on cigarettes, on all that stuff, I think are a great idea. I think that's a great way to raise revenue. Sin taxes are just fine by me. Well, that is it for the questions this week, but before I go, I want to give a shout out, and a very deserving one indeed. The shout out this week goes to sepiasiren. She is a regular commenter on my videos. You may have seen her. She is a very common presence in comment threads on my videos. And she has a YouTube channel, her own damn self, and it's well worth your attention. Sepiasiren, also known as Sista Atheist. She started doing a shout-out series of her own, which is great. I love to see fellow YouTubers and fellow YouTube atheists, especially lifting each other up and pointing each other to each other's videos. I think it's a wonderful thing that we should do more often. And she's got a great head on her shoulders, really sharp, really smart, and quite a voice on that girl. If there's no other reason for you to check out sepiasiren's videos, and there are other reasons, but just do what I do and just watch just to listen to the girl's voice, because she's got a great voice. So sepiasiren, check out that channel if you have not yet. And have a look and have a listen, because it's well worth your time. So that is it for this week's edition. I will be back to do this again next week, provided, of course, that you ask me some questions. Because for me to do this, you have to ask. So as always, leave a comment on this video with your question for next time. Ask me anything about anything you want to hear me talk about, anything you're interested in my opinion on, anything you want my often inexperienced and misinformed and dubious advice about. Anything at all, anything about anything. Nothing is too silly, nothing is too serious, and I will answer as many of them as I possibly can next time around. So I will see you next time, everybody. Thanks for watching, and take care.